Let's speak to Tory MP Sybil Cash, who's in our Westminster studio for us this morning. Good morning to you. Are you surprised that 56% of people think that there'll be a worse outcome of Brexit than they originally thought when they voted?
Well, I think that's what's said. I mean, the reality is that the project fear, which we've witnessed over the last few months, is equivalent to the project fear that took place before the referendum itself, and it actually had no effect on the outcome, quite the opposite eventually, because when people are told the truth that this European Union is completely undemocratic, the way in which it functions, and I'm chairman of the European Scrutiny Committee, and I've been on that committee for 33 years, I think I can reasonably say, having campaigned on this issue for all that period of time, I've seen pretty much everything. And when you hear these projections, of course it makes people concerned, but they are completely baseless when you come down to the fundamental question, which is who governs this country. And that is what the vote was all about, which was, do you want to leave the European Union? And there are very, very profound reasons for that, because we run in Westminster a democracy which is based on open transcripts, Hansard, votes are recorded and the rest of it. In the European Union, the decisions are taken behind closed doors by the Council of Ministers or by majority vote of other countries. We're outvoted more than any other country, and the bottom line is that they end up with consensus, and that consensus is not in British national interests. And our trade deficit with the EU, and these are Office of National Statistics figures, shows that our trade deficit with the other 27 runs at 67 billion a year, whereas, for example, Germany, with the same 27, makes a surplus of 104 billion. The reality is it is not in British interests to remain in the European Union, either for democratic or for economic reasons.
But what do you say to those who are claiming now that they're slightly disillusioned because they were told that this would be a simple process to leave the European Union? David Davis said it would be straight up and down. It'd take a couple of weeks to actually effect the exit, and it's proved everything other than that.
Well, I can't speak for other people. What I can say is that actually the government simply has not been robust enough, as my European Scrutiny Committee report said a few months ago, with the EU. The reality is that they've been bullying and intimidating us and all the rest of it, and the bottom line is that we made a strategic mistake, the government that is, made a strategic mistake at the beginning of the whole process by agreeing to the guidelines dictated by the European Union. If you work on that basis and you don't treat yourself as an equal partner, which you are, if you're leaving, and we lawfully left the European Union, in the consequence of the vote that was passed by 400 by the Parliament, 6-1 members of Parliament voted for the Referendum Act, 6-1. Then we had the Notification of Withdrawal Act after the referendum result, which was to leave. And in that act, 499, including Labour members, everybody, out of 650, 499 voted to withdraw from the European Union. And that speaks for itself. That is a democratic decision, both of the people and of Parliament.
So you're critical of the government's handling, so obviously no love for the Chequers plan.
None at all. I completely reject the Chequers plan because
I would expect you to say that. Boris Johnson is saying that he has an alternative, due to speak at the conference on Tuesday.
Yes, I'm speaking on Monday morning, yes.
Do you know what his plan entails, and do you support him?
Well, basically, the answer is that a lot of what he's been saying I do agree with. I've actually been saying it for a very long time. And the reality is that on the trading front, which I've just described, we have an enormous opportunity in the rest of the world if we can establish our own independent global trading arrangements with Australia, with Canada, with the United States in particular, and all over the world. And the reality is that inside the European Union, we run a monumental trade deficit in the single market against the other 27 member states, whereas Germany makes a massive surplus. The reality is it's not in British national interest to remain in the European Union, and if people want to consider the unemployment factor, for example, of young people, many of whom are now saying that they want to remain, just consider the fact that in the European Union there are about 5 countries with unemployment rates of between 20 and 42%, including some of the biggest countries. It's a really bad deal to be in the European Union because unemployment for young people is a complete and total disaster. And I think that people perhaps ought to think about that because that is their future. If they stay in the European Union, and furthermore, it's largely speaking run by Germany and with the other countries congregating around her, and that is not in our national interest either.
So Bill Cash, I wonder if I can just ask you whether you support the Sky News campaign to effect televised leaders'
Yes, I do.
Election.
I think we need more openness, more transparency. One of my objections to the whole of the way in which this has been conducted, the whole of this debate has been conducted, is that I don't think there's been a properly informed debate. I do believe very strongly that there are very powerful arguments which I'll set out in my speech at 11 o'clock on Monday morning to demonstrate how really undemocratic the European Union actually is, how undemocratic and inconsistent with the referendum vote the Chequers plan is. And I, as chairman of the European Scrutiny Committee, obviously, I have a lot of experience which has come from taking evidence from Dominic Raab, from David Davis, from the Prime Minister in the House of Commons, on the floor of the House, and so on. So for practical purposes, I do really believe that your slogan, make the debate happen, applies to the leadership campaign, if there is one. And I would only say, if there ever was one, and I only say this, actually you need to make the debate happen properly with regard to the European Union and the fact that we're leaving the European Union. These Remainers and reversers would take us back into a European Union that if people really knew what happened out there, behind closed doors, without transcripts, the decisions taken over our heads, outvoted, and actually, from an economic point of view, not good for the United Kingdom at all.
So
in
Bill
those
Cash,
circumstances, I think people would say, my goodness, I didn't realize it was like that. So I certainly would, what they did in June 2016, and they'd say, we're going to leave this European Union, and we really meant it in 2016, and we're really going to do it now, absolutely 100%. Let's get on with it, and
Bill Cash,
not muck around with Chequers.
I think we've got a good flavour of what your speech on Monday might entail.
Yes, it's going to be really strong.
Thanks for speaking to us. Good morning.
Okay,
Thank
bye-bye.
you.